Good day, everyone. I think we can start. A warm welcome. It's great to see all of you, and we're happy that you can join for the study report webinar today. As you all know, I'm Lizette de Villiers. I will not be doing the webinar today. I'm just going to do all the admin and be the host for today. Peter de Villiers, I think you all know Peter. He's the head of research and development at Shadowmatch. And Peter actually did all the research and he wrote the study report content. So he's the best person to present the content for the webinar this afternoon. You are currently on mute. You are welcome to post any question in the chat. During the course of the webinar, I will answer your questions. I'll also collate the questions. And then towards the end of the webinar, you will have the ability to participate live, ask your questions. So if you just want to write down your question and then present your question towards the last bit of the webinar, you are welcome. Thank you very much, Peter. Over to you.
Thank you, Lizette. Welcome, everybody, and good afternoon. As Lizette said, I am responsible for the development of and I'm the author of the Shadowmatch Study Report. I've been asked a bit earlier today, when did I start with the research? Well, probably, to be quite honest, I started with the research for study methods in about 1990. So that is, yeah. I know you have heard the right number. It's 30 years ago. 1990, that's the year when I started with the research. As a youth counselor, I had to deal with lots of stress that students accumulate in their lives because they couldn't get their minds around this whole study and study methods and why do we study and why do I have to study Afrikaans and English and German and maths and science because I want to become an engineer. So we will talk about that. So what I've done is over the years, I have logged hundreds of discussions with students. I've also been part of a research program in terms of helping high school, senior high school students deal with stress that they experience as a result of their academic load or their workload. I have also involved with a program that the church ran for young university students because from high school to university, that gap is for many a student crisis because it's just a different way of engaging the material. So what I will do is I will go through the study report again this afternoon, but much slower. So I will do it very slow, and I will also do this as a first round of training for those of you who are interested in understanding a bit more in depth about the study methods and the theories behind this. I'm going to share my screen or the computer screen, and then we'll take it from there on. So the study report is part of the Shadowmatch list of reports, and we will continuously research and develop more and more of these reports. There are quite a list of developments. I sat with our development team this morning, and we are in an urgent run to develop the next round of AI systems and intelligent systems for coaching, but that we can discuss later on. The first question that we need to try and get our minds around is, why do students fail? What sits behind the life of a failing student and probably, I don't like the word, but let's, for lack of a better word, use it, behind the psychology of a student that suffers a serious failure, either at high school, university, college. But there's another component of this. We must remember that learning doesn't end at the end of high school. There's a saying, and I don't know where it comes from. I've been trying to get hold of it, where somebody said once, long ago, let's say anonymous, said, "I love learning, I hate studying." Now, learning is a lifelong journey. We never stop learning. And learning is one of the sort of the natural capabilities of the human brain. It's a learning engine. The problem is if it's a learning engine, and it's a very competent learning engine, why is it that we resist some forms of learning and we just don't get it right? So here are some of the reasons. This is not the full list, but the most important ones are on the list. There's a mind block in the thinking of the student. We don't know where this mind block always comes from. Sometimes the mind blocks are from parents, sometimes from a teacher, sometimes from siblings, especially older brothers and sisters could put this mind block into younger siblings. Let's say, for instance, I'm the eldest and I'm in high school, late high school, and I really battle with one of the subjects. I can then become so vocal about this that it becomes a mind block in my younger brothers and sisters thinking that we are bad with languages, or languages are bad subjects, and mathematics, it's not a subject for us, or whatever it might be. But what happens is there's a mind block. In other words, the student is blocked from engaging the subject as learning content. They engage the subject as a problem. So the engagement is important, and when they have a mind block about something, they engage it as a problem instead of engaging it as a learning opportunity. Then there's a big problem or a big challenge around a very bad early phase teacher. If you have a teacher in the lower grades of school, and that teacher, they have a huge influence on children. It's a massive influence that they have on children. If they say something to a child, that could become a permanent belief system that the child holds about some subjects or about his or her own abilities. Then a critical failure. What happens if a student had a failure with a subject and it's a critical one? The fear for the subject starts to rule their thinking and their engagement with the learning content. Then the student engaged the fear instead of the work. This is a very, very important piece of our makeup. When we fear something, our brains and our thinking and our cognitive structures start to work with a fear and not with a problem. And this is where we have, we can list the examples over and over and over. Somebody has a fear for parallel parking, and they go for their driver's license, and when the test administrator asks them to do a parallel parking, the fear takes over and they just can't do it. So these are some of the examples that we can work with that are parallel to students who engage with fear instead of they engage with the learning content. Then there's a big thing about laziness as an early learning problem. I don't buy into this. I'm a bit critical about the idea that people are just by design lazy. I know it will be a struggle to win this argument, but the point is that we mustn't confuse laziness with an inability of the student to engage the learning material in a positive way. And sometimes students just can't get their energy together because of multiple reasons. But this is not always a lazy student. We can't say that a student who doesn't want to engage the learning content and always finds a reason to do something else is lazy. We must be very careful not to make these statements, because what we then do is we build another mind block, and that is you are lazy. So one day it's very easy for the student just not to do the work that is expected from them, because they have now bought into this idea, I'm a lazy person by design. So we must be very careful for that. And then if it is laziness, the parents didn't teach the child to work, this is a problem, especially amongst parents who are, let's put it as it is, who has a bit of money, parents in a strong position, who can have things done for them and for their children, there's a lack of teaching the child the principle of work. There's a lack of teaching the child that you've got to work in this life. And if things come for children too easily, then they grow up with a mindset that things must happen automatically. It must happen for me. I'm not the owner of the process. It must be done for me. And this is a huge problem, especially amongst modern societies, and more so in wealthy countries, where people can just have everything can be done for their children. And then the big reason, number 5 on our list, is the student doesn't have a reliable working recipe to study. He doesn't know what works. It's a firefighting exercise from the day they start working for an exam until the exams are something of the past. What are the wrong solutions? The wrong solutions that we all know, we are all witnesses to these solutions being presented. As parents and as teachers, and sometimes as coaches and advisors and other adults, maybe grandparents, we try to tell the student how to do it. And we tell the student how we did it. It's got nothing to do with how the student must do it. The way I do it has got nothing to do with the way my children or my friends or my grandchildren or whoever, or my brothers or sisters have to do it. There is no correlation between the two. It is unique. The second problem that we have, the wrong solution that we take, is to make my way, your way of studying, the student's way of studying. You can't do that. You can't say to the student, let me, I've got 3 degrees or 4 degrees or 5 degrees, and I flew through university and high school with straight A's. Let me tell you how to study. Really? Really? It doesn't work that way. What you actually do is you can present the student with a method that will not work for that student. And then you inflate and you compound and you emphasize the problem even more. And teachers do this very easily. They have this method, and then this method must work for everybody. It doesn't work. If that was the solution, we would all be straight A students, because there is a method. There isn't a method that works for everybody. Then we decide for the student what works for them and what not. Obviously, not only in terms of the study method, but other things as well. Write down, make notes in the class. I studied with a student that he was top of the class at varsity. He never made one note in class. Never. It worked for him. Does it work for me? Of course it doesn't work for me. But you can't say, because I have done this, you must do the same. Get a tutor and then blame the tutor. This is a problem. I think a lot of adults are to be blamed for this. They get a tutor, and then if the student doesn't make it, it's because there's a bad tutor. You can't. I'm a bit on the side of the tutor here. You can't do that. It's unfair towards the tutor, and it's unfair towards the student. It only makes the parent, the adult, the teacher, or the coach feel better, because at least they've got somebody to blame. And it could be the teacher. The next point in the middle of our slide, blame the teacher. Then what we also do is we expect from the student to be what the parents couldn't become. This is something that we must be very careful of. I always, when I wasn't very famous for doing this. I wasn't always loved by parents and teachers for doing this. But when I was a young minister, I called a spade a spade. I would talk straight to people, and I still tend to do it. But I would ask a student, so if your parents expect this from you, ask them their final year results from high school. Tell them, I want to see yours. And it always resulted in a bit of conflict. And I would then intervene and say to the parents, but What's the problem? Why didn't you get 8 A's or 6 A's? So I was a bit honest in terms of this, because what we do is we put a demand for success on a young person's life that is sometimes not within their reach. And then we set them up for failure. And you know how I feel about failure. It's the most destructive psychological construct that we can go through. Then drop the subject too early in the process. Obviously, this is what we like to do, drop the subject. Short-term solutions never work. Guys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, there is no shortcut in studying. There are a few ventures in life where there's no shortcut. Running a comrades has got no shortcut. There's no chance. There are some things in life you can't hide away from it. Landing an aircraft, there are no shortcuts. If you don't, you either land it or you're dead. So short-term solutions in studying does not work. And then the student must learn to struggle. This is one of the things that we get wrong. We want to make it easy for students. We want to help students by making things for them easy. It's wrong. A student must learn to struggle. Studying is hard work. It's the hardest part of our careers that we can go on. And then the worst, do the work for the student. This makes me mad, or this makes me even more mad. If I see parents and grandparents, and I'm working with people currently very close to me, where the grandfather does all the mathematics for his grandchild. And I said to him the other day, will you do it when he is at varsity third-year engineering student as well? I dare you. You won't be able to do it. He said, no. Then he's got to do it himself. I said to him, so when does he learn to do the work himself? Where's that break point? He said, no, about grade 10. I said, no, man. This happens before school. You must teach this to the child before they go to grade 1. If you don't teach it to the child before they go to grade 1, then you extend the process into the point where they have to do it themselves, and then they collapse. So doing it for the student, not the tutor, not the teacher, not the lecturer, nobody. I must tell you what happened to me in my second year at varsity when a professor in Greek said to me, I said to him, Professor, I don't understand the work. And he said to me, and? I said, I want to come to your office and spend some time with you so that you can explain it to me again. He said, Mr. de Villiers, what you don't understand is that I do understand the work. You're not understanding the work. It's not my problem. I will explain it again next year, same time, same lecture room, about the same date. I was furious. He taught me the biggest lesson of my life. He taught me, it's your problem. It's not my problem. It's your problem. You have to solve it. Not the tutor, not the teacher, nobody. You must find a method to get through this process. So what is the correct approach? The correct approach, guys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, is we must convince the student that she can do it. The first thing is that the student must have a position of strength where they say, I can do this. I can do this. I need to apply myself. I always say, I had a saying always in my life for my entire, well, since I started almost studying, we had a saying, the ABC of success in academic work. ABC stands for apply, bottom to chair. That's it. The student must say, I'm going to ABC this thing, I will break it, and I can do it. So building the ego position of strength is the first correct approach from parents, teachers, coaches, lecturers, and all the brothers and sisters. But even as adults, we must teach our young people, you can do it. Then the second is find and test the optimal study method. This is the key. The study method is in principle for everybody the same. In practice, it is for everybody unique. Now, this is the sentence, guys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, please write it down. Or if you watch this video again, mark this point in the video. It's in principle, the study method for the brain is for everybody the same. The practical method is for everybody unique. I'll give you an example later on during our discussion. Get all the other things sorted. You know what I found in discussions with students, and not 10, 20, and 30, ladies and gentlemen, hundreds. Successful students take a global approach to their work. They have a complete, a total approach of the things must be done in a certain way. They either don't listen to music or they listen to music. They either work with a study buddy or they work alone. But they get things that they bring in place. There's space where they study, the pens that they use. There are detailed components. They take a holistic approach on their study venture. It's not, I do this and the rest is not in place. They eat properly, they sleep properly, they exercise, they take breaks, they drink water, they shower in between. They have routines that takes everything in their lives into consideration. And with those routines, those habits, they then have a method, a holistic method that works for them. So we must address the bigger picture of the student's life as a working, studying individual. Then if it works, it's good. We must stop the process. You can't fix what is not broken. We must understand, guys and girls, that if the student understands that they can do it and they have found the optimal method and they get all the other things sorted and they are successful with their exams, leave it. Leave it. Don't expect from a student to be an 80% if it's a 60% student. I was in high school. I was a 50% student. 50, 55. That's it. And then I had a break, 5 years break after high school. And then I started at university. And then I had a different approach. I was more of an adult and a senior person at university in terms of age. But then I was a better student. But at high school, anything above 45, I was happy with it. And I convinced my parents and I said to them, I'm good with this. I'm happy with this. I've got access to university. I've got everything in place. Don't worry, relax. But I was in high school. I was a 50, 55, 57 student. So if the student is a 60% student, leave it. Leave it. Let it be. Unless the student wants to go to university, but then you must come back to point number one. The student must say to himself or herself, I can do this. I have to be in the 75s to get access to this and this and this varsity schools. So that is what we must understand. Then if it doesn't work, if all of the above doesn't work, make sure the student follow the process and help where you can to ensure that the recipe is strictly followed. This is a problem, ladies and gentlemen. It doesn't matter you have a recipe and you don't follow the recipe. It's like baking a cake. And the recipe says 2 cups of sugar, and you say, no, I don't have 2 cups of sugar. I'm going to get away with a half a cup. No. A recipe is magic, but you've got to follow it. And this is, I believe that everything in life is a recipe. Everything in life is a recipe. And if anybody says, but I don't have a recipe to do something, then I say, well, then that is your recipe. Not having a recipe is then your recipe. So if the recipe is followed strictly, and this is where we will lose points with our students, is they don't follow the recipe. They bake the cake without the sugar. And then if it still doesn't work, combine the study method with a subject mentor. I would say if we have the optimal method, we then start looking at a subject mentor for maths or science or languages or whatever it might be. And if that doesn't work, then drop the subject. And I am convinced that eventually you come to a point where it is in the interest of the student to just let go of the subject because they are at risk of other problems. Now, ladies and gentlemen, the most important aspect of everything is that the student must understand the big picture of life. And this is where I have a bit of a concern with the role that we play in the lives of our young people, either as parents, coaches, just adults across the street and at a friendship gathering, or whatever it is in a professional capacity as coaches or even counselors. Our young people do not understand and they do not see the big picture of life. It's a blurred reality for them. The first thing about the big picture in life, ladies and gentlemen, is failure is not an option. In Game of Thrones, at some point, somebody said to somebody else, in this world, you don't lose, you die. And in a way, it's true about our world. Go and have a look at what happens to people who failed critical points in their lives. They end up in a very bad state of living. If you look at somebody, I don't want to give you the statistics because it's frightening, and I'm very close to it because of my involvement still with the church, and we have fabulous stats in the church. But if a girl falls pregnant in late high school and she leaves school as a result of the pregnancy without completing her matric, her chances in South Africa across all populations to end up as a beggar is above 90%. So failure is not an option. Failure is not an option. The results of a serious and a critical failure is a seriously troubled life. Then what we must do is we must let them listen to the stories of successful people. We must create an awareness of success with young people. And this is why successful parents tend to bring up successful children, because the one thing that they get right is to create an awareness of success with their children. And if that is being married with you work for your success, then you've got the potential of a very successful student. But it's an understanding of life, which obviously doesn't solve the study method, but we'll get to it. Then our young people must understand what we do with the subjects we study. Now, ladies and gentlemen, I urge you to let your mind go through, why do we have to learn English as a language if we want to become engineers? Why do we have to be able to put a proper English sentence together if you want to become a pilot? Why do you have to study if you want to become a farmer? Now, I can answer all these questions for you, but as a coach, a counselor, a parent, or a teacher, you must be able to answer these questions. If somebody says to you, why do I have to study English as a subject? I want to become an engineer. You must immediately be able to say to that individual, so who's going to write your engineering reports? And if you use the wrong grammar and your report ends up as a witness point in court, and you didn't describe your technical specifications for the bridge in the correct English, and you are being held accountable because your report is open for interpretation, what will you say? So these subjects, the student must understand, why do we study maths? Why mathematics? Why do we study science and anatomy and languages? If they don't understand that, ladies and gentlemen, it is extremely difficult to motivate them for success, because there's a building block missing in the reason for doing the work. Then obviously, as I said in a previous slide, we must teach them to struggle. This is the biggest thing that you can teach a young person. Teach them to work very hard. It's a work ethics that we must teach them. We must show them hardworking people. And obviously the parents are the best examples that they have about hardworking people. And then let them experience the rewards of their successes, obviously, which is a big issue for young people. Now we get to the study method report structure. Now, ladies and gentlemen, the report has got 8 paragraphs or chapters, and I'm going to just give you a brief overview. There are the social preferences for the student in the report. Do they want to be part of a study group, or would they prefer to study alone? Or is there room for a combination of studying alone and in a group engagement? This is one of the most critical points in the holistic approach of the student, and we use the habits and the meta detail that we have in the AI engine of Shadowmatch to determine what is best for them, because some students can just not study alone. They really battle. Some can study alone, but they want from time to time engagement with a group. Some want to study. I was group number 3. I wanted to study. Leave me. I'll see you in the exam room. I don't want to have contact. I don't want to hear where you are. I don't want to hear what you study. Didn't want to hear anything. So fully on my own. And this is the chapter number 1. What is the preference of the student? And parents can say, I never studied with a group. Yeah, that was you. That's not me. So we must listen to the habits of the student to determine what is their preference. Then there's a study method that is in the detail of the method. It's different for every student, but in the principle, it follows the same principle. And that is for subjects like maths, mathematics, calculus, stats, bookkeeping. The list is quite long. These are the subjects, ladies and gentlemen, where we have the idea that if you understand it, you don't have to study. Now, I want to stop here. If somebody says, you don't have to study for maths, if you understand it, you are fine for exam. Say to that somebody, good, fine. I'll give you a calculus 1 final year exam paper from the local university, and then see how you do with that exam. You will get 0, nothing. If you are not in the lectures and you do not understand, study and practice, you cannot do these exams. I've said this to many people, and to my detriment, I've said it to many people who said to me, but if you understand maths, you don't have to study. I said, okay, cool. I'll get you an exam paper for 3rd year mathematics at university, and I'll give you 3 hours to write it, see what you get. Challenge them. It's not true, ladies and gentlemen. These are the most hardworking subjects that we have in high school and university. Then from there on, we have the 3rd chapter, where we provide the student with 2 individually unique study methods for that individual. These are not generic. They are unique to the student, and they have videos that are with them. The mathematics one as well. So there are videos in support of these methods to make it really easy and to help the student understand some of the detail and the emphasis in the study methods where they really have to apply themselves to go through it. Then chapter number 4 in the report is progress blocks, holdups, and frustrations. There are specific blockages and holdups that students could experience. The one is, for instance, I'm only going to give you one example. It's being referred to as a wandering mind. So what you do if you study is you read the content in your scope of work, but your mind is busy with something else. And once you've read 2 or 3 pages, you've got no idea what you've read because your mind was at a different place. You've read the words and the sentences, but there was no cognitive or conceptual application or engagement from your mind with the content. Your mind was wandering at different places. This is a blockage or a holdup. And then you've got to read the page again. And then halfway you go again on a wandering mind. So there are many of these, and we only have selected the most important ones that we highlight for specific students, and it's individually unique. Then the report gives 10 tips, and the bold ones are more applicable to the specific students. The tips that are printed in bold are the ones that are it carries more weight based on the students' habits than the other tips. So they must be extremely sensitive for the bold printed tips under the chapter of 10 tips. And then there's a very short chapter about an emergency exam. For instance, I would write on a Monday afternoon from 2 to 5, one of my third-year subjects, and Tuesday morning from 8 to 11, I write another subject, and I have the night between Monday evening, 5 o'clock, where I am already exhausted because of my exam and my preparation, and then starting the next day at 8 o'clock with my next exam. And there's a specific method for an emergency exam method where you are in serious trouble and you've got to cram this and jam this in the time that you have available that is completely out of space in terms of enough studying time, and you've got to do it. So, and the report is very nice. It says, give it a go. If the exam is fair, you might stand a chance to make it. If the exam is tough, you might not make it. And if the exam is easy, you might easily make it. And then there are exam writing tips. This is quite important, ladies and gentlemen, as the rest of the report. These are generic tips that you can pick up in most good publications on exam writing. How do you write an exam? Because the exam writing tips are quite generic. There are specific methods that you could follow. For instance, it shows research have indicated that reading the entire exam paper before you start writing it is not a good tip. We all think it's a good tip. It's not a good tip. In many instances, the student would start worrying about question number 7 and they can't answer question number 2. So they are so stressed up about the fact that they are going to get stuck with question number 7 that they now get stuck on question number 2 as well. So that's not if you give that as an exam tip, just make a mental note. It's not a good exam tip. And then online students, distance learning and homeschooling. This is a chapter that I wrote especially for students like UNISA and distance learning that is on the increase, homeschooling children. In other words, how to study if you do not have the engagement of a campus life. It's quite important. The rules around these paragraphs are very complicated, and it gives the student specific warnings, but also specific helplines that in their habits are assets that they could use for distance learning and homeschooling. So that's a very important part of the report, especially without knowing it, that we are now in the COVID crisis with universities, that some of our universities in South Africa will only finish their academic year at the end of March next year. So it's because of this whole crisis. Okay, now the underlying principles of the study report, guys and girls, just very briefly, if we look at the theory, the learning process is a process of repetition, and there's no question about that. Learning is a process of repetition. This is how the brain learns. We can have single moment learning results and successes, but it's normally as a result of a very high impact event. So if there's no very high impact event in the life of the individual, learning is a process of repetition. High impact event, trauma, or whatever it might be, that is a seriously high impact thing, could change our habits and our learning content in one single experience. But this is not so easy to create. For the rest of it, it's a process of repetition. Then active cognitive content awareness involvement. In short, the nice word is mindful repetition. What does it mean? It means, ladies and gentlemen, that the principle of studying is that my mind must actively engage the work, and as I repeat, my mind must engage the content in terms of a full awareness of what I have in front of me, and I need to repeat that awareness of what work is it that I have in front of me, so that I have an engagement with the work. You cannot study successfully like a budgie learning to say a word. It doesn't work. Then you say words in the exam and it's the wrong words, and then you're not there. So memory is dependent on cognitive involvement and repetition. What does it mean to have a cognitive involvement process? I am aware of what I'm studying. In other words, if I study in history the Second World War, I must engage the work so that I have a full awareness of the events that I'm trying to memorize. I cannot memorize the events just as numbers that I need to repeat and then write down in exam. So there must be a mindful involvement with the work. And then the challenge is that the way cognitive engagement happens is not generic. This is the problem, ladies and gentlemen. The way in which we engage our minds is it's not generic. It is individually unique. It's not generic. I'll get to the end of the slide now, and then I'll explain to you. The golden rule is very simple. 5 mindful repetitions. That's the rule. And this is the rule that I have followed in all the methods. 5 mindful repetitions. For some subjects, it could be, I recommend 6. For some, I recommend 10 mindful repetitions. But the golden rule is, and you can work with it like this, ladies and gentlemen, 6 mindful repetitions of all my work will give me, probably for the normal student, above 75%. 5 will give me between 65 and 75. 4 will give me between 55 and 65. 3, I'm at risk. 3 can be anything below 55. It could be 3 can drop down to 35 and 30. 2 repetitions, your chances of making it are slim. So this is a rule that I've worked with, and I've researched this, and I've seen it in the results. The golden rule is 5 mindful repetitions. Then the reliable working recipe. If I do this, I will be successful, and I don't need to stress. The point here, ladies and gentlemen, is the student must have the self-confidence of knowing, if I follow the recipe, I will be successful. That's it. So I don't have to fight stress. I don't have to fight fear. I don't have to engage the problem of fear and I'm not sure of myself. I can know if I've gone through the recipe, I can go write my exam. And then it's individually unique. This is the catch, ladies and gentlemen. One of the greatest golf players of all time said, I don't care how you swing the club, you have to strike the ball properly. And this is so true. Every big golfer and every big tennis player do one thing correct, and that is they strike the ball properly. if it's a tennis player, if it's a hockey player, if it's a golfer, if it's a squash player, what they do is at the point of impact with the ball, they strike the ball properly. The swing that they have, if you look at Nadal and Federer, their style, the way they handle the racket, the place where they strike the ball, the point of impact is completely different. But the generic thing is they strike the ball properly. Here is what we must uphold. The principle is the ball striking moment is 5 mindful repetitions. How we do it is completely different from individual to individual. So it's the principle is simple. The how we do this principle is individually unique, and it differs from individual to individual. Now, if we want to coach a student for an exam, go through the following process, ladies and gentlemen. Obviously, the parents are not the best coaches, especially not when it comes to study methods. Parents have a different role. And the role of the parents, this is not the topic for today, but the role of the parent is different from that of a professional coach to help the student optimize their study method. So it's either a teacher at school or a professional coach. So this is what we do. We take a quick overview of the report. You've got to sit down with a student, either on Zoom, virtual or face-to-face, and take a quick overview. Go through the report quickly so that you have a full understanding that the report takes a holistic approach, a global approach to the world of the studying student. And then once you've gone through the sort of the highlights and the key moments of the report, then you need a minimum of 6 sessions where we have 1 coaching session per chapter, and you can combine some of the chapters so that we end up in 6 sessions. So for instance, the 2 study methods could be handled in 1 session, and studying from home and the 10 tips could be combined, but you can combine them, but you need 6 sessions, I think, for the student to be of any help. Then, ladies and gentlemen, bullet point number 2 is absolutely critical, and that is go through the detail of the report. We have a challenge, and that is people do not read. They browse. They do window shopping. They don't read a book. They window shop a book. They page through it and check out the pictures and the headings. This is the first lesson for your student, is to go with the student through every part of the report. That is the first learning moment for the student. Read the detail. Then make sure the student has a very good understanding of the content. We must come to the point, ladies and gentlemen, where the student understands the content of the report in detail. And for that, you need to read the report as well. You've got to read the report and make sure that you understand the content of the report in detail so that you can actually draw a picture for the student of what it means. And with the student, and the student must do it himself. Watch all the videos and discuss the detail in the videos, and make a point of helping the student to understand the video content, because the videos are extremely loaded with information and detail about the study method. It actually captures every bit of detail of the method. Read the content in detail and discuss. I repeat this. The rest of the detail, other than the videos, we must discuss and read the content in detail. And ask the student, how do you deal with this? How do you handle this? How do you see preventing an urge to do something different? How do we deal with this? There are advice points for all these things. And then if you can get it right, let the student draw a personal study process map using the report. It will be fantastic. So it's a process that the student must be able to write the study method as a process down without even looking at the report. The student must be able to say, this is my method. I do this, and this, and I do it 4 times. That's it. Once you are there, remember, you've got to work with 5 mindful repetitions, but the method is unique for every student. If you have questions, I'm more than willing to help you answer and think about them. Now, over to...
Thank you, Peter. Thanks for the presentation. There were some questions and I was just busy answering in the chat. Let me just quickly. So I'm just going to present Joseph's question, which I've answered and you maybe want to add. Joseph said, I've always learned easiest by seeing the patterns and reasoning it out rather than rote learning, which is what repetition sounds like to me. This is why I studied psychology and not literature or history. How do these principles apply to different subjects and countries with different requirements? So my answer to Joseph was that there are 13 different study methods and the system chooses the 2 best methods compared to your habits. If I'm correct, Peter, with repetition, you don't mean rote learning, learn like a parrot. You must repeat your method that this study report presents to you. So some of the methods would be go and make a video of your material and present this video to 5 of your friends. Another method might be that you need to go and present a lecture. So the method is what you should repeat. You shouldn't be studying parrot style. So I think maybe you want to comment on that, Peter.
Rote learning is without cognitive engagement. Once if you rote learn something, you learn it like sound. It's a sound that you make, and in the exam you will be asked to make the sound of a train and an aeroplane and a scooter, and then you make the sound of a train, an aeroplane, of a scooter. That's rote learning. Mindful repetition is I engage the work. In other words, I can even tell a story about the work. Let me give you an example of a mathematical equation that I've learned. I have learned the formula for a normal distribution curve in stats. And I can actually tell a story about this. I can share a story with my parents about what I have learned about the distribution of statistical information on a chart. So it's where I engage the material to a point where I have a full mindful cognitive acceptance of the information so that I can give it back in a mindful and a fully awareness manner. But the way in which we prefer to do the repetition is different from individual to individual.
Great, thanks, Peter. Joseph said understood, and it makes a lot of sense. Ladies and gentlemen, I have activated the ability for you to unmute yourself. So if you want to participate live, you're welcome to just unmute yourself and ask the question. I'll keep quiet for a moment to give somebody the opportunity to ask a question. I can't see, all the faces are not on, so I can't see if you raise your hand. We'll give a few more minutes. I think from my side, Peter, thank you very much. Ladies and gentlemen, most of you have received your study reports already. If there are some people in this webinar that have not received their own study reports, we will send you your study report after the webinar or by latest tomorrow morning, just so that you can actually see the report and experience your own report. It will make it much easier for you to engage the report and obviously to market the report to some of your customers. I'm quickly opening the chat, Peter. Anel says, Peter, where were you 42 years ago when I needed it? She needed that 42 years ago when she studied. Or now maybe you should study something now and try it out, even if it's just a short course. Shona says, as always, a very informative, well-articulated presentation and very comprehensive. Ladies and gentlemen, I think if that's then, we will stay on for some questions. I'm going to allow Peter a last word, and then I'm going to stop the recording, and then we'll stay on for some questions. After Peter's last word, I will just stop the recording. Thanks, Peter.
Lisette, what I will do is in a month from now, or maybe in 2 weeks, I will do a very short webinar on how to help students in groups. In other words, study method group workshops. Because of the fact that the study methods are individually unique, Some individuals have asked, but how can I do this in group sessions? Because 6 sessions with a student will just cost the parents too much money for a professional coach. Well, you know what? If you look at the importance of the career future of a student and 6 interventions, it's a very good investment. But what we can do is in a month or in 2 weeks from now, I must just get the structure of the presentation in my mind sorted. I will present a very short workshop for those who are interested on how to present the study method workshops for a group of students and how to work with a group of students so that they get maximum value out of it. And then with that, obviously optimize time for the coach, but also reduce some of the cost that it might be on the household of the parents. So I will try and fit this in before the first week of November, and hold me to it by the first week of November. I promise that I will facilitate the workshop to help the coaches do that, because it makes time management and time optimization a bit easier. It can be done.
Question, Peter. Thank you very much for insightful, useful presentation. So the age is from age about 13 upwards until any age as old as we are.
Yeah, Joseph, it's a good question. 13, 14 is the lower end cutoff age for various reasons. It's the age where a formal method of studying becomes increasingly important. But even I spoke to some of my friends and associates of Shadowmatch and Shadowmatch friends like yourself and the rest of the individuals on the screen currently. They are busy with PhDs, and they've got some material that they really have to get in their minds. They've got to get it in their heads, and they battle, and they are 52, 53 years old. And the study method actually helps them. Even on that age, it helps them with a method that works. I have also with people doing career development during a later stage of their lives. They do an MBA or they do a postgrad at a university, or they go for an upgrade on a pilot's license to fly commercial AI instrument flying, and they've got to prepare for exams. And the study method works at any age from about the age of 13. And the important thing, Joseph, that we must keep in mind is that the learning process, even for people in a working environment where they are at a steep learning curve, the method of learning is very important so that they could accelerate their own learning process in a new working environment. So your question is very, very important for everybody that is in the process of learning new material. But thanks for the question. It's a great question.
Thanks, Peter. 2 more questions, and then we'll end the formalities, and then you're welcome to stay on and chat with Peter. From Joni, do you recommend the 6 sessions to be 1-hour sessions or 30-minute sessions? And then I'll present the second question in the same breath. Is the online study distance learning tips generic or unique based on the person's Shadowmatch profile? Thanks, Peter.
No, I didn't listen to the second question, Lizette. I'll just answer the first one first, then ask the, you know that my multitasking is horrific. Joni, don't go more than 45 minutes. If the child is under the age of 18, don't go more than 45 minutes. In fact, I'm currently running a data statistics analytics on data that I have for how long can we keep our minds together. And it seems that for younger people under the age of 18, 19, up to 20, the stretch is 40 minutes becomes a stretch. 36, 37, 38 minutes and onwards is a stretch. So I wouldn't go more than 45 minutes. For adults, an hour is fine, but the intensity of the content is such that more than an hour is an overstretch. Keep it for an hour, but for younger children and in the age group 13, 14, where Joseph said the report could start, yes, a 35 minutes of full engagement with the report. and then you've got to do it in 6 sessions. That's best. And if not, then it becomes a new burden on their shoulders. But it's an excellent question. Now you can ask the second question, Lizette.
Thanks. It was from Johan. Johan, I don't know if you want to, I'll ask your question. You're welcome to then also participate live. I see you've come live onto the system. Is the online study and distance learning tips generic, or is it unique based on the Shadowmatch profile of the individual? Thanks.
Now, Lizette and Johan, there is only one part of the report that is generic, and that is the emergency exam writing. The online and distance learning, there are in total 45 paragraphs in the system, and the paragraphs are internally unique. So the paragraph would address a specific issue, but in turn, the detail in the paragraph could differ from student to student. So there are 45 paragraphs that are within the paragraphs different for unique habits and profiles that we have from the answers. And it only selects the critical, most important ones where the student have shown the highest risk and the highest benefit from those tips. Because if we give 45 tips for students, it becomes just another burden for them. So we've selected the critical part based on their habits, and it's not generic, it's unique to every student. It's a good question.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'm just going to end and say thank you very much for attending the webinar. You're welcome to stay on just for the purpose of the recording. I'm going to end now and say have a wonderful day. Thanks for your time.